Well, welcome back. And Evans, you were talking about the process, but just before you continue, let's go to Daya Akintobi. Daya, you also you saw the way the process played out yesterday. Give me your take.
Well, it's been smooth and peaceful so far. The number of disruptions and outbreaks of violence are relatively minor compared to the past. So I'd say so far we're doing quite well. I think the big real problem is insecurity. I think by and large the logistics challenges. I heard a couple of reports about the upload, that even after the BVAS, after the results were all,
upload to the IREV.
That upload to the IREV was a problem because of network. Now INEC has no control over that. I think in the things INEC had control over, it did relatively well except for security. And as our other guest alluded to, the synergy between the army and the police seems not to have worked very well, because as we know, the army is not going to come to the polling booths individually to oversee a civil society situation. So it makes me wonder, our security forces seem stretched too thin for the sheer number of polling units. We have 177,000 across
and let's not also forget that we have some of our security agents now fighting insurgency in the northeast, fighting banditry in the northwest. So obviously you can't have all of them for election duties.
It's not possible, but yet these disruptions continue to occur. I've even heard some outbreaks of violence even today, or at polling places where elections were carried over from yesterday because they were disrupted due to outbreaks of violence. Now today, the reschedule is also being affected because there have been reports of ballot snatching at some of those rescheduled polling units. So how do we arrest this situation in such a way that we'll be able to begin to have seamless elections? I heard an innovative suggestion. I don't know how practicable it is, that elections, why don't we hold elections in different states on different days so that we have enough security officers to put at each of the polling booths? I don't know how practicable that is.
Do you know, I actually thought about that as well. At some point I was like, look, what's wrong? If we have to hold this election in 2 days, then maybe we should do that, because you know, the logistics of organizing general elections in this country in 1 day is quite tasking. INEC has always had this problem right from 1999, and the truth is that we keep expanding. More polling and voting areas are now being created. So, and how many security forces do we have in the country? How many policemen do we actually have in the country? This is a fairly large country. So I don't know. It's I really don't know. And you know, you look at it, Evans. The truth is that, look, if the election had also started in good time,
yes,
across the country, and in almost, at least let's say, in majority of the polling units, let's say in probably 90% of the polling units, we certainly would not be having these problems. Because when you do not start, if election that is due to start at 8:30 and then you start at 11, the truth is that there will be consequences for that. So because you definitely would not be able to end the process at 2:30. So you would have, like yesterday we saw polling units where voting took place at night. In the night, people were using their torchlight. In
Adamawa.
Yes, in Adamawa we saw a collation center where results were being collated with torchlights. As a matter of fact, no light. There was no electricity supply.
And that cannot be.
So it's a problem when you do not start elections now in good time, and sometimes, you know, it's difficult to blame INEC for some of these challenges as well, because some of the areas where elections take place in this country are quite remote.
Yes, even in civilized country like the US, the election is not in 1 day. There are some people who vote 1 week before the main election will commence. Though essential service workers, those who are involved, maybe nurses, doctors, they vote before the main election starts. But possibly we should be looking at how to extend the number of days and maybe not have the election. We can have it regionally. Maybe 2 regions in the first day. We have 6 regions. We can have them 2 to 3 days. We can. It's a suggestion that can actually work if the systems are well taken care of. Because when you look at the issue of the BVAS malfunctioning and then the lack of INEC to upload, even though there's some IT
and genuinely, from what I saw yesterday too, I mean, you could see that some of the ad hoc staff didn't have a proper grasp of the operation.
Yeah, they didn't have a proper grasp. And the truth is that Nigerians should know that the results that is expected to be uploaded after election is just a guide.
Exactly.
It's not because there's no voter education.
Yes,
there's
yes,
no voter
education.
INEC didn't inform the public proper that one is to go first, okay, so that by the time you take the proper...
Because you already have the recorded one at the
police have...
The agents have, the police...
The agents have, the police have. So, I mean...
And a copy is pasted there.
And a copy is pasted there. So, the one they are uploading, the fact that they are unable to upload it does not mean it has been compromised. Yeah. And I learned that they can upload offline. And when the network is restored, it uploads automatically. That is what the explanation that was given. But the public were not ready for that because, again, the issue of lack of trust too, and that the general public were working with ill-informed...
no proper education.
Yes, no proper education. I think that INEC have a directorate for voter education, but they are always overwhelmed by the logistics of the vote or the conduct of the election, that much premium is not placed on that area. And
I think you have a point there, because there was this incident I saw, you know, I saw online at a polling, at a collation center, I think, when an electoral officer was collating the results of, he was actually using the result sheets.
Yes.
That the result sheets now giving to the polling agents. You know, you normally would have the results sheets before it's uploaded.
Signed.
And then, yes, signed. So he was using the result sheets to collate the results. And then I could hear an agent in the background insisting that he should go into the beavers and open the beavers and use the results.
Use it directly from the beavers. So it's an issue of lack of trust. People don't trust the INEC officials. They don't also trust that it is a result that was recorded at the polling unit that will be transmitted. That if it's not done in their presence, it means that whatever will go there thereafter, it's not the result. So, I mean, we need to work on that. Let's have INEC educate the public on these issues. If we have that, we'll reduce tension, and that will help the system. Because what we have now is that I think there's an over-bloated tension. That's actually, people have different information in the figment of their imagination. That is not necessarily the translation of the reality on ground. So we need to work on that area.
Dio, what have you got to say about it? Because, look, whether we like it or not, let's just tell ourselves the truth. The political parties, as we speak, have the results of all the polling units that have been called. That's just the truth. Because as we speak, we know that these political parties have their situation room, and they all have their own situation room, and they have their agents at these polling units. And we know after the election at the polling unit, the result, of course, is declared at that polling unit, and each agent is given a copy of the result. And this copy, of course, the agents will send to their situation room. So whether we like it or not, look, as far as I'm concerned, the parties actually have the results with them anyway. But but it's difficult to understand why we continue to have this controversy about IREV and no IREV, or, you know, and the issue of the beavers. It appears people do not understand how the entire process works.
Well, we've been seeing results flying all over the place, even though coalition hasn't, official coalition hasn't even started. We've been seeing results flying all over the place on social media, primarily, as you say, coming from the situation rooms of all the parties. But part of the reason why we advocate caution and patience is that any of the political parties can post anything to make it look like there's propaganda. It's a key instrument in electioneering, is propaganda. And as a result, there's no assurance that what is coming out of the situation rooms is a reflection of reality. And so we say, hold your horses until INEC begins to release the results officially. Without a doubt, the party agents and the parties have something in their hands, but there's nothing to say that that something is accurate, which is what Evans was referring to earlier, is that there is a trust deficit among the Nigerian electorate, not just towards INEC, but towards government in general. If you look at the 2003 and the 2000 elections, the way they played out, it was readily apparent that those elections were massively rigged. And as a result, ever since then, voter turnout has been on a downward spiral voter trust, citizens' trust towards the government, towards any administration in power, has always been very suspect. People don't trust anything that government says. People don't trust anything that even INEC, which is why you saw at some of the polling stations yesterday, people were insistent that until you upload these results that we have seen, we're not living here. I even heard that some of the INEC officials were held hostage. Yes. They were not allowed to leave the polling stations until
when they were telling the voters that, look, the network is down, and in some cases genuinely the network could actually be down.
Yes, but as Evan said earlier, as long as they've uploaded them, even if the results are hanging in cyberspace, whenever the network comes back up, it will upload automatically. But nobody wanted to hear that. They didn't want to believe that seeing is believing. If I don't see it happen with my eyes, it's subject to compromise. If you walk out of here without that thing having electronically uploaded, you can change it to mean anything you want to after we have left. That is a trust deficit.
But do you think the BVAS as a whole has been a game changer in our elections?
Well, we won't know until afterwards, because all the BVAS does is accredit the voters. So when the process is completed, we will now look at what BVAS says in terms of the numbers it accredited versus the numbers that actually voted in each of the polling units. So until that happens, we can't really say that BVAS has been effective. But it did accredit voters at each of the polling units. But the jury is still out until a correlation can be made between what BVAS says and the election results that are collated.
But if you compare it with the card readers,
it's
a way ahead of the card readers. It's just that people should trust that the results declared at the polling units are valid, because everybody, in fact, the electors join in the counting.
Yes, exactly.
So when it is declared, they should believe it. So when they start to...
And since they have copies, they should just follow.
Yes, since they have copies, they should hold it
process,
on. And then those who are involved in uploading black market results all over the place. Yesterday, one of the black market results online says that the APC candidate lost at his polling unit. Today, the traditional media reported something different, that he actually won. So that is a distortion.
I think I find it even wrong to be declaring results of polling units, and it's very common, but I don't think it's right.
It's not right. I think
because that you win your polling unit still makes no difference.
It makes no difference. You see, you can still the next polling unit after your polling unit, did you win that? And how far can we go in declaring here and there and all that? It creates a lot of confusion. And they should be allowed to do their job and let them be the one to determine and dictate exactly what the result is, when and how.
Okay, let's talk about this issue of late start to the elections. You know, before this election started, the INEC chairman had given every assurance that this election was going to be different in terms of, you know, the start, that INEC officials are going to arrive, polling units in good time. And in fairness to INEC, non-sensitive materials were distributed a long time ago, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And sensitive materials too were distributed early enough. I mean, they arrived the various states in good time, not just the various states now, even the centers where these sensitive materials were to be kept. But it appears where we actually have a problem is the distribution or the movement of materials now from the center, you know, the center of distribution in every state or probably every local government area now to the polling unit. That's where the issue is. I'm just wondering how can that be dealt with?
I think that's where the delay problem happens. Can be minimized if a day to the officials are mobilized to the polling unit a day to the day.
To the election.
Yes. And then the security men are deployed to guard the process. Possibly the officials could maybe stay overnight.
Wouldn't that be a challenge? Where will they keep this? Because
when you have
deploy them, they are not going to be. They are not going to go to the polling units anyway.
No, what I mean, you should deploy to the polling units, because since we have security,
you deploy to the polling units
a day to the day.
But you know how some of these polling units are. I mean, polling units, you know, some polling units are just along the road.
They are porous and volatile.
Yes, exactly.
But so if you have security men,
no, I'm saying you deploy. So where are you going to keep those materials? Where will this ad hoc staff stay? You have
they can they can do it in such a way that they stay close by, maybe in hotels or accommodations close by. Because what I'm looking at is the reason for this delay is that early morning distribution is usually not very swift. They run into problem. Even when INEC officials get to polling around 10, 9:30, they are still late. They are still late. Before they set up, it's already 10. Before they start voting, it's 10:30. I mean, once they vote for like 2-3 hours, it's already getting dark. So there must be a measure. We can always cut time by making more preparation a day to that particular day to save time, to make sure that the time is brought closer to
okay.
the officials.
Let me just pause you and let's go to Calabar to just get an update now from our person in Calabar, Victor Ekpo, just to give us an update of what the situation is. Victor, thank you very much for coming on the show. Tell us what exactly the situation is in Calabar. We know election is supposed to be taking place in some polling units in the city.
Yes, elections are taking place in some polling units in the city and across a few local governments here in Cross River State. Of course, would always complain that the election didn't start, INEC officials didn't come on time, and then that has also affected, the quick commencement of voting. And of course, people are ready to vote, but unfortunately, INEC officials are not available to allow Nigerians vote, as the case may be. So, as it were, INEC, they need to up their game, because if in a capital city, Calabar, a capital city, is having these issues, one is only left to wonder what would then happen at the interland, like the Pakistan.
Where you are is quite noisy. I don't know if you can. Victor, if you can hear me, the background, Victor, can you hear me, Victor? Yes, the background sound there is actually very noisy. Yeah, so if you can actually do something about it, I'd really appreciate. So are you saying that, voting is not taking place today, as in voting has actually not started, that INEC officials are not on ground for the rescheduled election?
At 10 a.m. in some polling units across the Calabar Municipal, being the seat of government, some polling units were complaining that INEC officials are yet to arrive as at 10 a.m. this morning.
Well, I don't, Victor. Unfortunately, I can't hear you. I think we'll have to come back. From what Victor is saying, even with the rescheduled election, materials and INEC officials would appear not to be on ground.
Yes, there's always been a logistical issue. Ever since 1999, the Electoral Commission has always had challenges getting the distribution right, getting it done on time, getting the process started in a punctual manner, and getting it wrapped up within the time frame. I think that having done this about 6 or 7 times, by now it should be clear where the challenges are and possible solutions. We've brought one up recently during this program about the possibility of maybe extending or maybe doing the elections over different days in different regions. There've got to be different solutions, because clearly there are logistic challenges. No matter how early they try to start, materials arrive late, personnel arrive late, access is difficult in some areas, transportation. I saw a story yesterday about a civil defense vehicle that was bringing materials to Lagos from Abuja had an accident. How do you prevent against such things happening? You could see the vehicle somersaulted, it was turned upside down, all the material, it looked like voting slips and other things were strewn all over the expressway. There was, I think, a corpse of one of the officers that got thrown out of the vehicle. How do you guard against such things happening? There will always be the human factor, not to add the Nigerian factor and the African time factor. By the time you compute all those things together, they are a recipe for inefficiency and delay. So what do we do? maybe, as I said, the BVAS is the beginning of good things to come. Perhaps we should build technologically upon the BVAS to where future outings rely more on technology and less on human involvement. The more technology is deployed, perhaps we'll get to the point one day where we can actually vote electronically. So we eliminate ballot paper, we eliminate ballot boxes, we eliminate even...
I think that should be our aspiration.
It should be, I think. And that will cure a lot of these deficiencies, really.
All right, let's just quickly take another break now, and we'll be right back. So don't go away, stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's go to Calabar again, where we now have Victor, and I think we have better audio from him now. Victor, thank you very much for staying with us. So just what I asked the other time, are you saying that even with the rescheduled election, INEC officials and materials are not on ground, or they arrived late?
They came in quite late. Like I said earlier, before we had the audio challenge, was that at about 10 a.m., voters were, very much ready, troop out in their numbers to go cast their votes. But INEC officials were yet to arrive at the polling unit. And this is around Calabar Municipal voting units, some few voting point booths around Calabar Municipal. And tell you what, if in Calabar Municipal there is a metropolis and is a capital of the state, we are having this challenge for INEC to come just on time. One wonders what would happen in Bakassi, that is a riverine area, or up the north, Obudu, that is Obudu, where you have the Obudu Cattle Ranch. We're also getting reports somewhere around Yala. Obudu happens to be the local government where the governor, Professor Ben Ayade, is from. We're having reports that there are challenges with arrival of INEC officials to come in just in time. But I tell you what, people are ready. People are determined. People are focused to stay and ensure that they take part in they take part in the election. So everyone is committed. And I tell you, people say, no matter what happens, we are here. We're not going to go anywhere. We'll ensure that we take part in the electioneering. So for Calabar, there are no security issues, if you allow me to say that. The challenge is with the INEC. And I tell you, some of these, if you check where the INEC headquarters, the office is in Calabar, it's some few minutes away. Calabar is not like Lagos. There's no traffic. There are no hold up anywhere in Calabar. So it's just some few minutes away from INEC state headquarters. So one then wonders why and what is causing the delay. Why can't INEC officials just come, just keep to the time and then come and just give the people the opportunity to cast their votes? And another thing we observe in Calabar as well, across the state, is that some INEC officials were not really conversant with the BVAS. They were not conversant with the BVAS. Some of them, people weren't even, some of the officials didn't even know what to do, how to troubleshoot the BVAS machine. So one could wonder, with all the training, what really happened? How come that these officials do not know how to, troubleshoot the BVAS?
I mean, certainly, it's something I also witnessed covering the election in Lagos, that some of the officials actually don't have a proper handle of the BVAS. I don't know, and you just raised a very important point, the kind of training given, because we know INEC actually organized a series of trainings for some days, and there are, to be fair, there are INEC officials who are very good with the BVAS at some polling units, and they were very fast. But there were also a number of them who could not really operate the machine, and they were very slow. And when you slow down the process like that, it only lengthens the time of voting, and that's the reason why voting happens at night. But it's a good thing, at least, that, just as you've reported, they've arrived in Calabar and that voting is taking place, even though they did not come on time. So we're going to get back to you, Victor Ekpo, but we want to thank you very much for that update. We'll come back to you much later to find out if voting has actually ended. So it's just what we've been talking about, Evans. The truth is, some of these ad hoc staff don't have proper grasp of how to operate the BVAS machine. It's a problem. But also another challenge. You just heard what he said,
yes.
What Victor said, that INEC office or INEC headquarters is within the city. And so, and when you reschedule an election, this time the voting is not taking place all over the state. It's taking place in just very few polling units. You would expect that everything would be, everything will happen in good time. So I'm just wondering, what then could be the challenge again?
Yeah, I think they are not very disciplined with time. That's what I'm saying here. If it has been, had it been restricted to the fact that they didn't come out on the main day of election, then possibly we could say, okay, before they get to the polling unit to carry materials and a lot of things, they would have had a lot of issues and all that. And like he said, say in Calabar, there's no traffic, it's not at Lagos. So, but when you now have a reschedule, and then the same issue, occurs. So what it means is that there's lack of discipline with timing. Okay, in 20...
do you think that there might be other issues we may not know? Maybe the challenges with logistics?
Of course.
Drivers might,
might not
want
in
to
2019, move. In 2019, the issue of logistics was a very huge problem. And when we're analyzing election in 2019, we did say that INEC should take proper note of this area so that when they are coming up with their report, their general report for the election, it should be one of the areas where they will make recommendation to government so that it can be improved upon. Kept saying this and all that. So that area is still not yet. In the area of the card reader, they have done well by introducing the BVAS. And in the area of the accreditation and voting, they have done well by saying once you are accredited, you start voting immediately. Unlike before, your accreditation will first of all go through before voting will start. Okay, so they have done well in those areas. But now, the area of logistics and prompt arrival of materials and the workers, human capital, should be worked on before the next election or before the next staggered election we're going to have. That is the area where I think we're having problem. And that is what is creating this issue of spilling over from one day to the other. Because if they all arrive early, there will be no issue of that. I mean, each polling unit, you have about 750 to 500.
Yes.
750 to 500. Sometimes some 500. And some polling unit less than that. So it's something that can be conducted within 3 hours if everything is working effectively.
That is true.
And I think that has been the projection. But where they are not there on time and the materials, the equipment are having issues and all that, it will definitely spill over. And when it spills over, by then the politicians would have understood the direction of the election. And once they get that, they begin to deploy malpractice.
Exactly.
So
just to get it.
We should avoid that.
Dio, when you have these delays, they're actually not good. And then you have some of these challenges. You look, they're just not good, even for the optics. Don't you think all of these problems, could cast doubts on the final outcome of the election?
Without a doubt. I mean, there's always been an issue of credibility as far as the Nigerian electorate is concerned, to do with both the electoral umpire as well as the administration of various governments. There's always been a trust deficit. So when you begin to see hitches, there's a conspiratorial mind that says, could it be that they're trying to manipulate the results? Could the delays be intentional? And even if they happen, even if it's happenstance, it opens the door to possibility of manipulation. So each and every time there's a hitch that causes a delay, it opens the door to larger questions being asked about the integrity of the process. So it's definitely not a good thing. The ideal situation would be for elections to start as and when due, to be conducted efficiently, and to end at the appropriate time. But is that utopia realistic, considering our cultural disposition, considering the harshness of our terrain, considering environmental challenges? Is that a realistic possibility that in the Nigeria of today, elections that are scheduled for 8:30 will actually start at 8:30 because materials arrived on time, personnel and officials arrived on time, there were no breakdowns of vehicles on the way, there were no accidents, personnel didn't turn up late, the transporters didn't have a flat tire, there was no dispute between the transporter and his union about how much he was going to charge. There are so many variables that end up throwing wrenches or spanners in the works, to where it is, as I said, it is a flight of fancy to believe that when you are operating a manual system in a country like Nigeria, that it can run smoothly according to plan. That's not to excuse our lapses. I'm not one who tries to justify this thing called African time, but it is a part of our cultural predisposition to where we are late for everything. Where, and as Evan said earlier, INEC has a penchant for late timing. But INEC is a function of our larger society. Yes, exactly. The officials, the people, they're drawn from among us, and what they do reflects our larger orientation as a people. So we can't separate INEC's behavior from our behavior as a people in terms of things like time. So what is this solution? I really don't know. As I've said, maybe now that we've leveraged on technology, maybe we can upscale it to where human intervention becomes reduced to the barest minimum and let technology take this thing. Because technology can be accurate, it can be efficient, it can be timely. So all of these things we're talking about can be resolved by technology. Evans,
do you think we should? Because look, we've continued to have these problems now since 1999, and yes. It's like we really can't deal with it. Don't you think, talking about electronic voting, there's this argument that the country is not ready, is not ripe, that when you look at the issue of internet penetration and all, look, internet penetration has actually improved anyway, that, you know, the system could be hacked, or, you know, people have come up with different reasons why electronic voting should not be adopted, even though there are also so many that we can see so many advantages. Don't you think, I'm just wondering, could we devise, probably come up with you know, an initiative that combines electronic with what we're doing at the moment? So say you deploy electronic voting to areas, maybe urban centers, areas where you think electronic voting can work, and then you deploy this method, the one we're using now, to rural areas where you know that there just might be challenges. I'm just wondering, is it not possible to combine both methods?
It's possible. I think we're ready for this electronic voting. The reason I say so is, take JAMB, for example. Now, if you want to write JAMB, you must have NIN in today Nigeria. Without the NIN, because the NIN that you will use to open the portal, to even purchase the form, to do, and then people in the rural areas all over, they are writing JAMB as we speak. They are registering JAMB. Even the registration this year,
even though they go to designated centers.
Yes, they go. I mean, what I'm saying is, first of all, that NIN, we can even use that number to vote. We can use it as our identity to vote if we really want to. Because if you see how
even if we don't use the numbers to vote, the NIN to vote, we have PVCs.
We have PVC, and then the number really. Because why JAMB adopted is because once you clock the number, in the number will determine whether you, the name, is actually the one that is sitting for the exam and I want to register for the exam. If you see the way JAMB arrange it, you will know that this one is really effective. So we can adopt that. People in the rural area, they are writing JAMBs too. All we need to do is that they upgrade to the system. And areas where you have poor rural enhancement, you cannot take the manual system there. That's one. Two, the beavers we already have too can actually fix this problem. The voting can be done on the beavers if it's upgraded. Once it recognizes you that you are the one, then you vote immediately. It counts, and then it picks up. So why do we need to use the beavers, then put it aside, carry a piece of paper, and then start to write from the beavers to compute and all that. So at the end of, if we achieve electronic voting, there will be no need for logistics, whatever, all this logistics we're talking about. INEC would just be somewhere in the control room to determine who is voting when and how it's going. So we need to actually do that. That is the position where we are right now.
Dayo, I'm going to come to you because I want your take on this, but let's quickly go to Kaduna State where Abubakar Ismail is standing by to bring us up to speed with what the situation is in Kaduna. Abubakar, I know elections, voting is taking place now in a number of polling units in Kaduna. Tell us what the situation is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deji. Currently in Kaduna, quite a number of polling units are exercising their franchise, and I can tell you the election and voting there is actually going peacefully, knowing fully that the citizens this time around has come out in mass in some certain location, while in some location the turnout of the voters is actually recorded. We recorded a low turnout, especially the women who actually matched the quite number of voters. But all the part of Kaduna now currently, almost everybody is at home. Some were even regretting because of the quite numbers that are coming from the other part of the country where people vote massively. Some of them were regretting why they did not vote yesterday, while of course the little polling unit that are voting today, they cannot vote because that's not their polling unit. That's currently the situation in Kaduna today.
And let me just ask you, because this issue of turnout in Kaduna, we know Kaduna has always been a vote mine, if you like. The number of those who collected their PVCs in Kaduna is quite high, and we heard the governor yesterday complain about this low turnout. What do you think is responsible for it?
To be honest and sincere, people of Kaduna, most of them, according to what I gathered yesterday, and a lot of people we interviewed, they are highly disappointed in the way the government handled a lot of things, because Kaduna is one of the states where most of the citizens are either entrepreneurs or business people, but they suffered a lot from the revocation of land and shops by the state government and then demolition of a lot of properties, which they committed a lot in bringing the government to power, and then they see the high rate of insecurity, which actually migrated a lot of people, forced them to be like not even environmental migrants, but they are displaced now. So a lot of quite number of them have relocated to some of the states which has less insecurity. And as well, I can tell you the Muslim ticket has actually plays a role, because, you know, Kaduna State is one of the states which actually religious is playing a lot of emphasis, contribute a lot when it comes to voting. So the governor have practiced the Muslim ticket, and which did not favor a lot of even the Muslim. They are mostly the victims of the ticket. And now APC comes with the Muslim ticket. You know, the religious crisis has been happening in Kaduna State. So a lot of voters were even scared to go out and vote, so that a really religious crisis may not erupt. And as well, you know, the cashless policy.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that cashless policy. How?
Yes.
I mean, in terms of impact now, how much impact do you think it had on voter turnout?
It has a lot, because, you know, people were battling even to get fuel to travel around. People were managing all they have. It really affects people. It really affects voters because they don't have means of transportation. Kaduna is one of the states whereby you see somebody will be staying in Rigasa and he'll be voting in Malali. He'll be voting in the southern part of the state because that's where his business environment is. So a lot of them actually doesn't have means of transportation because of they don't have cash at hand. Most of the commercial vehicles are not available, and even the ones that are available, they don't collect transfer, they don't accept transfer. Up to now, that challenge is there and the cash is not at hand. So actually, it's although the state government have built a mechanism where they provide some vehicles to convey people, but you know the citizens are much, the number of vehicles as well are less. So it actually affects the voter turnout, with a lot of women, you know, they cannot risk going out, and all the men, I saw a lot of them trekking, going to vote. While coming back, it's late, and you know the insecurity will even tell you not to go, but thinking as no, I will not go and vote. I think it actually contributes to low turnout of voters in the state.
All right, Abubakar Ismail, thank you very much for that update. Thanks a lot for your time. Daya, let me get your reaction to this.
Yes, without a doubt, cash redesign of the Naira has had a deleterious effect on the outcome of the election, because you can't separate the fact that people who are hungry, people who are angry, people who don't have cash in their pocket to meet their daily needs will feel predisposed or feel congenial enough to go out and do their civic duty. Those who are going to do it are doing it in anger, and that anger may be reflected in the way they vote. Then there are those who, for reasons of lack of money in their pocket, couldn't travel. Some people are registered in their hometowns. Some people work somewhere different from where they live, and they only go home on weekends. Now they don't have cash to move to go to where they registered to vote. And that, of course, breeds a discontent. And it will reflect in the way, in voter behavior at the polls. So I second what the young man from Kaduna said, that it will have an impact, not just in Kaduna, but in the various urban areas of the country and the rural areas where people are going through difficulty. Okay,
what about these suggestions, that the suggestion that has been made here, that we combine electronic and the current system we have, as a way now to resolve this logistics challenge we continue to have during our elections?
Well, I wouldn't say for sure that is the ideal solution, but I'm open-minded enough to say that we need to look at alternatives. If a hybrid, which is what you're suggesting, a hybrid of part manual and part electronic is combined as a baseline strategy, which will now be built upon until we become fully electronic. So what you're talking about is a gradual transition, because maybe to go from fully manual to fully automated, fully electronic might be too much of a jarring transition to do all at once. So perhaps evolve slowly is what you're talking about. But my question is, for those who did it electronically versus those who did it manually, wouldn't there be some measure of contention as to the credibility? If the results turn out one way or the other, the manual people might say, oh, the electronic people had an advantage, they didn't have logistics issues, their polls ran on time, perhaps. So it could lend itself to controversy in terms of the equality of the outcomes, because they are separate processes. But nonetheless, we have to try something. The bottom line is we can't continue to repeat the same thing over and over and expect a different result since 1999 to 2023. It's obviously not going to change. If we continue to use this manual system alone, it will continue to be fraught with delays, fraught with inefficiencies. So yeah, we do need to try something, and we've got enough brainy people, we've got enough IT people in the country who can sit down at a table and come up with an idea of a method that will be democratic, but will still assure efficient results to where no one is disenfranchised, but the system is not compromised either, and we're able to do this thing in a timely fashion that satisfies all the stakeholders and gives us a result that is acceptable to all people. My belief is that technology has to play a key role in that.
All right. You want to say something?
Yeah, he has said most of the things I want to say, but the issue is that we're already at that technological phase. I mean, we're using ATMs, using debit cards, we're paying money online transfer. In fact, that's what we're doing practically today. All the government need to do is to work on our electronic systems, internet payment system and all that, make it more robust. Then we can transit into it. And then from there, we can eliminate all these issues, and INEC will be relieved, because I believe that the future is technology. And it's going to come to a time when INEC will just be a technological institution, as against a regulatory institution that will dispense of elections and make it very effective.
All right, we're going to take another break now, and when we come back, another guest will join us, and so we would have to say bye-bye to events. So we'll take a short break and we'll be right back.